Biden and those growing calls for him to step aside. But let's stay with the NATO summit and discuss what's been agreed today. And let's speak to Anja Manuel. She's the Executive Director of the Aspen Strategy Group, a bipartisan US foreign policy forum based in D.C. This is the 75th anniversary of the NATO alliance, but it comes at a time where some people are questioning the usefulness and the future of that alliance. Where do you see it fitting into the current global map at the moment?
Thanks for having me, Regini. NATO has never been more relevant or more useful. I mean, it is largely unsung, but the amount of coordination, cooperation, being on the same page, and how much aid is being provided to Ukraine really should be celebrated. I also think a really important thing is happening this week at the summit, which is that they are announcing a new command in Wiesbaden, Germany, that's going to coordinate the provision of that military equipment to Ukraine. That's really important because it future-proofs the alliance, if you will, and keeps it out of the vagaries of politics. You've all just had your election in the UK. We have one coming up in the US. The French have just had their election. And just putting that aid to Ukraine on a firmer footing is important. And as you just reported, Jens Stoltenberg, the outgoing head of NATO, talking about how increasingly relevant the alliance is in the Indo-Pacific as well.
You talk about Ukraine, and of course NATO has aspirations to become part of the alliance. How close, if at all, is Ukraine to becoming some part of it in, say, the next couple of years?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of talk in Washington about how exactly to word it as part of this summit. I don't know whether they're going to come out on that, but for all intents and purposes, this alliance is defending Ukraine, and they are right to do this. This is a relatively small, the aid we're giving to Ukraine is a relatively small part of all of our defense budgets. No NATO soldiers are standing in harm's way. The Ukrainians are fighting valiantly, and they're doing real damage to the Russians. It's a very formidable opponent, but we need to make sure that Ukraine stays in the fight and that Russia is ultimately defeated.
Anja, let's zoom out a bit and look again at the future of NATO. It could be that Donald Trump re-enters the White House. Of course, we don't know until November and that election. But Mr. Trump has been less than favourable about NATO and in the past has even threatened to pull the US out of the alliance. How much is this summit all about sort of future-proofing the alliance for that possibility?
I'm not sure how much it is about President Trump or potential President Trump, but they are certainly future-proofing the alliance, and they are right to do so. I think every American president realizes once they get into office how important it is to have friends and allies. It is a dangerous world out there. Great powers are acting badly. By that, I mean mostly the Russians, also the Chinese, Iranians, and others. And one of the best things we have going from a U.S. perspective is that we have so many friends and allies in the fight. I run a big conference that's happening next week in Aspen, where we need to be talking about all of these issues. We're going to have Secure Cavoli, many from the U.S. and international stage. And I think people need to affirm its importance.
OK, thank you so much, Anja Manuel. We've run out of time, but thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that ongoing NATO summit. And a quick mention, of course, there's plenty more on that summit on the BBC News.